Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Voices from the Field, Season 1, Session 7. I'm Gabby Kraniak here with Shelly Lyle, the Career Engagement and Outreach Coordinator for the Department of Sport Management. In this last session of the Fall 2020 semester, Shelly will be introducing and interviewing our guest, Robert Leverock. Shelly, take it away.
Well, thanks everyone for being a part today. We're super excited to have Robert with us. We're looking forward to hearing about his story and his journey in the sports industry. So before he gets going, I'll share a little bit of his background. Robert graduated from the Jacksonville University with his bachelor's in accounting and finance. He also has a master's of accountancy and with a tax concentration from University of North Florida. He has worked many years in the industry as an accountant in various roles. He's been a senior accountant in Hilliard, Ennis, Taylor, and Pelham for a year. In Jacksonville, he was a controller with Corbett Manufacturing Company for 5 years and has had his role with Gator Bowl Sports for 28 years. So Robert, why don't you lead us off with that? Tell us a little bit about how did you get your start in sports? Obviously, accounting was your background. So tell us a little bit about that and what was the path that led you that way?
So the path that led me that way was actually a friend of mine and actually a manager of mine at Deloitte and Touche was one of the public accounting firm I was working with, said, "Hey, look, you really need to get involved in our community. We want you to do that as part of our business model. I've got this great opportunity for you. It's to volunteer for the Gator Bowl, the postseason college football game." And I'm like, when is it? And he was like, "Well, it's the week between Christmas and New Year's." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of family time. I'm not really interested." And he probably poked me for about 2 years. And finally, one December, he came to me, he said, December of 92, he came to me and said, "Hey, look," he goes, "I'm in a bind. The guys that always do this aren't doing it. Please just do it for 1 year." Well, it was kind of an amazing job because I didn't realize what he wanted me to do. I literally showed up. I met the teams when they arrived on the tarmac. The head coach got in a van with me. I drove him. We basically followed the teams in their buses, and I was with them the entire week. And then when they left, I drove the coach back out to the airport, and away they went. So, formerly, I was a high school athlete, I guess I would say. I was a quarterback. I was a catcher. So I had the experience. And as I got to watch these guys, I was like, I said, would life have been different had I been involved in sports? I mean, because literally I was off in finance. There was not really any sports involved. I had banking background, manufacturing background, but this kind of gave me a peek to the sports side of things. And I was like, wow, this is really neat. So, I did this for right at 6 years. I was doing the whole volunteer host when the team came in. Over that time, I actually became really good friends with Coach Beamer, Frank Beamer, with Virginia Tech. In the middle of all that, I had moved to Lake City to run a manufacturing company. And when I decided to move back to Jacksonville is my home, born and raised here, I decided, I think it's time for me to get out of accounting. I've done very well in that, but in college, I'd actually help with my parents, put myself through college with sales. I'm like, I think I'm going to look for a sales job. Well, I've been volunteering for the bowl. And so in volunteering for the bowl, I moved away to Lake City to run the manufacturing company. So I've been gone about 5 years. Now, that said, every year I would come back and volunteer, take a week off, and I'd volunteer for the bowl. I was committed to the bowl. And by doing that, I reached out to the CEO and the chief operating officer of the bowl. Actually, I guess he was the director of marketing at that time. I said, "Hey guys, keep your ears open. I'm ready to come back to Jacksonville. Let me know." Well, I volunteered a whole nother year, and all of a sudden one day the director of marketing here picked up the phone and said, "Hey Robert, you still looking for a job?" I said, "Well, the right one." He goes, "Do you want mine?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Do I want yours?" He goes, "Well, I'm on my own career path. I'm leaving here," and he was going to work for a publishing company, Host Communications, which no longer exists. It's basically IMG is what they've evolved into. And I said, "Sure." So I actually came here as the director of marketing, kind of left behind my accounting background. And then I did that until 2006. In 2006, our accountant left. And we actually, in 2005, our accountant left. She and I jointly hired someone. In 2006, the person we hired decided, yeah, this isn't working for me, and they left. So I was actually the director of marketing and the director of finance for a year. Both positions was a long year. At the end of it, my boss said, I don't know why you got out of the numbers game, but you're the best numbers guy I've ever seen. You're now my CFO. And I went, no. And he says, yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of how everything evolved. I will say that to kind of talk to, and I know you're going to have some more questions, but kind of talk to, maybe not get too far ahead of you. I will say that I know as students, we typically try and build our resume with volunteer experiences and load them up. Now, granted, I was out in the professional world, so I wasn't trying to load up a lot, but I chose one that I felt kind of passionate about. And after once the guy let me do it for a year and I realized, oh yeah, this is the one I want, I put my heart and soul into it. So I would say to you, and eventually they considered me for the job here. And it was, all I said was, hey, can you help me find a job in Jacksonville? And they said, hey, do you want to work for us? Because they saw what type of effort I put in. So I would say to you, if you're going to volunteer, find something you're really passionate about. Don't focus on, if I can get X number on my resume, this will build my resume and make it look good. No, because if it's on your resume, it may become part of the interview process and people say, well, so tell me a little bit about what you did here. And when you really can't talk to it, and if no one on your volunteer list can actually be a reference for you, how much did you really put into it? How much does it really say about you? So I just say that part of why I'm here today is because the effort I put in as volunteer. So I would caution you, I would encourage you, volunteer, but I would caution you to make the right choices in your volunteering so that you are excited about it, enjoy it, and will put an effort in that, who knows, potentially down the road, you may get a job out of it. Did that help, Kelly?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so many good things about that, as well as, it speaks to volunteering is important, but every time you volunteer too, you are meeting new people, you're making an impression, and to strategically use the volunteer opportunity. Because for you, it was a job opportunity down the line, like you said, that you didn't even know. So choosing even volunteer, sport for development, if you're really into sports, like ways where you can kind of hybrid your hobbies, your interests, your passions with an opportunity to reach out and help other people as well, which, could open your eyes to things that you didn't think you'd be interested in working places, to work for, or people to work with, things like that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I think we've had discussions with a lot of students about volunteering, especially as students, like you mentioned, being young and not having a lot of work experience. Now with COVID, volunteering could be an easier option at times when things open up again. So that's really, really helpful. So tell us a little bit about the Gator Bowl sports, what you do kind of day in and day out, and then maybe what your job looks like and within a year, kind of.
Sure. So, it's kind of funny because people will go, wait a minute. You have a full-time job and there's one game? We do a little bit more than that. So Gator Bowl Sports is a parent company to basically, Gator Bowl Sports is the primary parent. We also have the Jacksonville Sports Council, and then we have Gator Bowl Sports Charities. We have 3 entities. But primarily, we'll address the bowl because I think that's the biggest piece of it. And I'll touch a little bit on Jack Sports and charities. But the bowl itself, it's this year will be January 2nd, 12 noon. Shameless plug there. But it's somewhere between 12/31 and January 2nd of each year. So we're kind of in crunch time right now. We're trying to basically cross the T's and dot the I's and kind of wrap it up and be ready to go. We're selling tickets, and the first question people say is, who's playing? We won't know until the 20th. Typically it would have been this weekend, but because of COVID, it's pushed back a little bit. So a typical year, we're kind of at the end of my year. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Game's over. So our fiscal year runs from April 1st through March 31st. So typically right before year end, we're building a budget and presenting a budget. So we start that, and through the summer, we're basically trying to renew corporate partners and our membership, people that individually buy tickets to the game. So there's basically, from a financial standpoint, that's what I'm doing. I'm handling that. During that time, come April 1st, I also have a financial audit that comes in. So I'm dealing with a financial audit. We go through that. Then there's tax returns. So then typically for our game itself, I do move into an operations mode. Basically, I guess because of my seniority, I do a smaller piece of it, but I execute a piece that I used to totally coordinate. But on game day, I run the field operations. So from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, if it happens on the field, I'm in charge of that. So starting in September, we start trying to plan all of that out. Okay, what components are we going to have in the game? Are we going to have the Marine Corps be part of the pregame ceremony and do the color guard with the national anthem? What kind of show are we going to have at halftime? So all of that, and then all of the boards are coordinated with in-game activities that happen on the field. And I'm sure we're going to talk about COVID in a little bit, but we'll talk about how it affected it this year. But typically, that's how I would shift. All year long, I'm constantly doing accounting work. But well, to give you an idea, we have 6 full-time staff members. That's the size of our bowl right now. Now, we hire up interns. Typically, we hire 5. This year with COVID, we only hired 3. So there's 11 of us that basically execute this with a bunch of volunteers. So Gabby came in August a year ago. It was a year ago, right? Golly, it's only been feels like forever ago. But anyway, so she came in and she got to see, all right, here's how we start executing, and then we just run with it. And like I said, we're to the point where we're crossing T's and dotting I's because it is December. We've got to have everything finished. So a typical year is accounting all year, some budgeting, and I will say, depending on what you want to do, when you get involved with a small organization, everybody on our staff is involved in budgeting, understands the concept of how to put everything together, then how to go out and reach membership and do those kind of things. We have weekly staff members, and everybody understands their role and may get assigned something out of somebody else's job responsibilities. It's just kind of how we roll in a small organization.
Yeah, and what so you don't really have a normal day because
Oh.
I'm like, well, I could ask you, but that really wouldn't be, a day in September is going to look very different than a day at the bowl game, but it sounds like, can you speak to a little bit of a small organization, the kind of pros and cons to getting a lot of experience in various departments, but then also maybe the challenges of you having more on your plate because of that?
Sure. Well, so I will tell you that to me, I think is a big advantage to being in a small organization, because sometimes, and I've been in the big organizations back when, but sometimes when you're a big organization, it's hard to get needles to move. And what I mean by that is, okay, we have a concept. I like this concept. I'm pitching it. Somebody above me likes it. Oh wait, now it needs to go 3 more rungs before you get anything to happen. That's not how it happens here. I mean, basically, we have a chief executive officer, and when we put something together, it goes to him. And then if it's a major impact on the financials, then he'll have to take it to our board. But short of that, we can make a lot of decisions, make them quickly. And by being in a small organization, we're all working side by side and you can see the whole picture. If you're in a large organization, you may be totally down one road here. And I use the example of the Jaguars. We have a great relationship with them across the way, but they bring interns in specifically for instance, production or for marketing. I mean, they only get to see one piece. In our group, some of the interns that are brought in basically as marketing end up working on the production side of it. And on game day, leading into game day, so now we're in the process. This month is when we start going, okay, what's everybody doing game day? And so we start saying, okay, this staff member will do this, this, and this. This staff member will do this. So you get exposed to a wide range because you're it. It's not like there's 20 more people over there. Kind of the joke last year, first year that the Jaguars actually ran the field operations for me. I was on the field with them. They used 4 people. I used to do it by myself with about 8 volunteers. but they had 4 paid employees. So that's the difference in the organization. Now, great. I mean, they can afford it. They had a lot of assets to throw at it, but you see what I'm talking about. In a large organization, those people only got to see little pieces, whereas I saw the whole thing, and I think that's the benefit of a small organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that everyone has a different preference, right? So that works for some people. Some people kind of want the bigger, work for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But like you said, your experience, like you get to kind of help with a lot of different areas within your organization, which also gives you a lot more say as well as how you go about things. And I think that, yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to both for sure. So can you tell me, your job right now, what's the most rewarding part of that in your current role?
It's funny. I didn't talk about the charity side of one of our organizations. We do a lot of neat things with charities. Currently, probably one of the most rewarding things we do is every year, we created a few years ago, I guess we're on our 4th year now, what's called the Dream Team. And Dreams Come True is an organization that works with children with serious health issues that basically decide there's a dream that I want to have. And we take and we make a dream team. We select 12 of their children and we bring them. And so our volunteer structure, our corporate people, the members that help us wear what's called a green jacket. It's a green blazer. The Orange Bowl has an orange one. Various bowls, that's kind of our piece that we wear. So these kids spend an entire fall with us and ultimately will end up being given a green coat in essence. And then in addition, on game day, they actually receive a jersey and come out on the field. And just to see the excitement on these kids' face and how we touch them, it's special. It's special. That's probably the biggest thing. The other, now that's from a real heart touch. The other thing that is so exciting to me is when we actually get to game week. And really, when I say game week, the 2 to 3 days leading up to the game, and our town's filled with whatever colors here. If it's Nebraska, there's a wave of red. If it's Tennessee, there's a wave of orange. And it's passionate college fans and people excited to be in my city. I mean, this is where I was born and raised. And to see that happen, and then to see them pack this stadium and understand what it meant to all the people in our town, because the whole reason we were founded, well, now 76 years, we just celebrated 75 last year, 75 years ago, was because Christmas is a slow time. And the founding fathers said, hey, we want to bring people to Jacksonville so they can kind of experience Jacksonville and what's a slow time. It'll bring some economic impact here and it'll help people out. Well, talking about rewarding, knowing that when we bring a team to town, the bellhop at a hotel is going to be able to work some extra hours, make some extra money, and make a difference at Christmas, maybe even make a car payment. So there's how we affect the lives in our community by having the game here as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And can you share a little bit about the nonprofit side? We haven't had a lot of people on yet that have talked about working with or for a nonprofit in the sports industry. So can you share about how that works with you guys?
Sure. So, and I will say this, so we talk pros and cons, and I know, and I'm going to say this again, because a lot of the individuals that I see interviewing coming out of college or even with internships are thinking big titles, big dollars. That's really not what nonprofit is. And so I will say, I talked about all the great things about having a small organization. A lot of times what you get with a nonprofit and a small organization is there's no upward mobility. I mean, like I said, we all report to the CEO, so we're a straight line. But nonprofits, they're great. You will tend, excuse me, not to make as much money as you would in the corporate world. But let me be clear, when we're talking corporate sports marketing world as well, early on, the entry jobs don't pay as well either. So I think one of the great things about a nonprofit, there's some advantages to being able to raise funds. I mean, you are a charity. Everything we're doing is a charitable purpose. And people go, well, you talked about what you did for the Dream Team, but why is the Bowl a charitable organization? Well, the reality is the team payouts go to 2 universities or a university and a college, go to 2 teams, which are nonprofits. So it helps further higher education. So it's one of those things where we can go out and ask for money without having to say, okay, I'm going to give you 100% return or 110% return on your money. They see that return on what good it does for the economy. So it's one of those things where there's different ways to go out and ask for money and different ways to do things. People tend to appreciate nonprofits and their efforts. But, so there's advantages and disadvantages. It depends on what kind of environment you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And so can you explain to you really quick the three different entities and how your role and how you're kind of involved in all three and how they balance out?
Sure. So the reality is in my mind, I look at it all as one. As an accountant, I have to make sure that everything falls into the right company. But for all intents and purposes, the Gator Bowl Sports is the bowl game. All right. And that's what falls in there. We do have membership. So the people that are here year round for us, supporting us, committees, helping us fundraise, the board of direction, all falls in there. The Jacksonville Sports Council, we started in 2014. And you might notice that I'm wearing an NCAA basketball shirt today. So we have hosted the NCAA first and second rounds twice here. Now, granted, I'm here physically in a stadium. We typically deal with football, but we have a great relationship with ASM Global, which is the management company for all the facilities here in Jacksonville. And so we work with them to basically have the NCAA first and second rounds. But we've done crazy things like from the Sports Council side. We had USA Curling come here one year. And so we helped support that. We did a lot of promotions, had a night where our membership went out there and actually learned how to curl. Right now we have an annual contract with the University of Florida and Florida State. We have the Florida State baseball game in March, the end of March. Unfortunately, COVID didn't allow that to happen last year, but we're planning on, with everything going in the right direction right now, to have that game again. We'll have, I think, 2 more years on it. But so we do baseball. We've also done SEC gymnastics championships, SEC women's basketball championships. There's a lot of different things that we do. Excuse me 1 second. There's a lot of. Are we back? Sorry, I had a phone call. There are a lot of things that we do. Those kind of things. Primarily, it's collegiate that we're attempting to do. Now, charities, I briefly talked about. They do the Dream Team, but we also have what you can call a mentoring program. It's called the DuPont 500. It's basically we go into middle schools and we mentor young students and we connect them. Is it interesting? So we connect them with sports figures. So we bring in football players, we bring in baseball players, and they get to communicate with them and understand the importance first of education, and then second of their athletic abilities. But it tries to keep them on the right path. We do a lot of work with that. And then we do some fundraising with the schools in the charity world and give back a little bit. One of the cool things we do as well with charities has what's called Blessings in a Backpack. And they work with a local charity, and the teams, when they come in, those players actually stuff those with food for local children that go home on the weekends and without these backpacks would literally not eat or eat very little for the weekend. So that's kind of the three pieces. When we started doing all the different sports under the Sports Council, other than the football game, typically charities we are a charity. So charities was housed under the bowl. We decided to break it out. That's the main reason.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you have a really unique job. Like for, a small company, you get involved in a lot of things. Yes.
Sure.
But you also have different organizations almost that you work with and alongside. So that's really cool. I don't know if students would automatically know that if they just looked at your title. So I think that's really helpful for them to see and pursue jobs that might not be with a team or one specific nonprofit, but organizations like you who host kind of a variety of different things in the sports industry as well, which is awesome. So tell me about what activities in your job you've enjoyed the most and kind of found the most interesting, and maybe one that you don't love about your job.
One that I don't love. Okay, so let's be clear. So here's something I will say, along with the volunteer thought process. learn to be humble. In everything you do, learn to be humble and understand as we're talking to basically, as I understand it, a group that's just starting out, but will one day be the people that are running our companies in our country. Remember that you should be humble, but also remember that if you're going to ask somebody to do something, you should be willing to do that yourself. So one of the worst things I do, and you'll have to pardon me, but in the middle of COVID, we had no housekeeping. I cleaned the toilets. I'm the chief financial officer of this organization, and I clean the bathrooms. I mean, you know what? I'm sure these students, they live in apartments and clean their own bathrooms, or at least hopefully. So, but I mean, that's probably, and that's not even, it's just something you do. It's an everyday job that you would think, oh, wait, you're the CFO. Why are you? It's what I had to do. I mean, there wasn't anybody. I was the only person here.
Yeah. And can you, that's amazing. I think it's great. I always say that even on a team, like we should, as a team in that setting, you have to be willing to do the lowest, on the job. And
Yep.
if you aren't, then I think there creates a little bit of divide too within the team.
Absolutely.
So that's a great leader, first of all. And then second, can you define humbleness? So I think everyone might have a little different definition, but for you, what does humble mean or look like?
Well, I think humble is respecting everyone's views and understanding that you're no better than the person right next to you. Titles may be different, experience may be different, but you should maintain an air that everyone has a right to their opinion and everyone has a right to input, because nobody knows it all. You may have the experience, you may think you know it all, but a lot of times, and I've talked a little bit about the new folks coming in, starting their jobs. Sometimes a fresh set of eyes is a good thing, but you always want to remain humble. And I guess humble is the opposite of arrogance. You don't want to be arrogant and think that you know it all. If you've got a great GPA, you've got this great GPA, so you're book smart. Well, no, I've done this and this and this. Because it's funny, we've had people come in and every time you talk about something, they've done it. They're like, wow, you're just coming out of college and you've done all this? This is amazing. So humble to me is recognizing that everyone here on earth, period, is equal. It's moving up the ladder. On your way up, you should never step on someone, because on your way down, you'll see them again. And people successful in life have their ups and downs. So there's always downs with ups. That's kind of my thought.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, just because especially the sports world, really small,
Yes.
and people talk, right? So I think remembering that to get to where you're going, stepping on people is not the best way, because, they are still likely going to stay in that industry as well. And then you're going to have to prove who is right or wrong and all the things that go into that. So yeah, I think that's really, really good advice. And then, so tell us a little bit how your role has changed or been impacted by this pandemic.
Well, so to give you an idea, so let's just talk. I'm the numbers guy, right? So a year ago, our total revenues were 10.8 million. We budgeted 5.2. So, less than half in revenue, and that was conservative. We're still not sure we'll get there. It's so the first step was, all right, step back, figure out everything we can cut expense wise, and then conservatively budget revenues. To give you an idea, so we've had as many people, and this is a very unusual game when I say this. We've had as many as 84,000 people in the stadium. Last year we were right at 63. This year we'll be pretty excited if we get around 7,000. And part of that is out of our control. That's CDC saying, look, you can have 25% capacity in the stadium. Us reaching out to our members and saying, hey, are you interested? Like I said, we've been around 75 years. some of those members are going, well, I think we'll pass this year, and we're letting them pass. Next year, they'll get their ticket packages again. Same tickets they have had, some of them for 60, 65 years. They'll get them back. We're just right now. And even those people that say, no, we want the same number of tickets, we're not able to put them in there because literally and I don't know if you went to Florida, Georgia, but some of these people on here might have gone as a Florida fan, gone to the Florida, Georgia game. All of the seats that are available are left alone. Everything else is zip tied shut. So the whole stadium's that way. And so it's kind of a crazy situation. So that talks about generally the revenues and the expense side of it. But when this started, I'll never forget. I mean, we were Friday saying, okay, we're going to come in Monday, but not sure how long we're going to keep the office open. Well, was it Friday the 13th, maybe? Anyway, over the weekend, the CEO called me and said, we're done. We're shutting down the office. I said, somebody's got to go check the mail. Somebody's got to pay the bills. Somebody's got to make payroll. So from March all the way through, oh gosh, I guess we were probably August before people really started coming back in. I was considered the essential personnel. And so I came to the stadium every day by myself and sat in this office and, I'd wait for the mail, it'd come, do all that kind of stuff. But I kind of became the person that people called and said, hey, we need you to do this or this or this. So, I mean, initially it was pretty weird in that, everybody was semi-locked down. I mean, we just did not have anybody in the offices. And so we got pretty good at doing what we're doing right now. Zoom calls. I think we now do Teams, but understand the concept. Doing Zoom calls. I tell you that I do believe that the way we've started doing business, all of us, will greatly affect future from the standpoint of, there have always been tons and tons of conventions. People may go to more of this and have maybe 1 or 2 annual conventions they go to versus, quarterly or whatever. I mean, so it changed the way we do business. We used to, a cool little way it changed the way we do business. We have monthly meetings for our corporate membership and those members that support us at the $3,000 and above level. We call them committee members. So every month it's a 2-hour meeting. Really what it is the first 20 minutes is just kind of a cocktail party. We have 20 minutes of a meeting that walks through what's going on, how things are happening. And then another hour and 20 minutes of cocktail, but it's socializing and networking is what it is really what it's intended for. Well, interestingly, because of COVID, we went to virtual. But what was really cool is because it was virtual, we were able to reach out to some big names in sports. We've had the president of the Jacksonville Jaguars talk to us. The commissioner of the SEC, Greg Sankey, talked to us. This Thursday, we'll have John Swafford, the commissioner of the ACC. And the reason for those two is basically those two are conference tie-ins. We had John Hancock with the CFP, college football playoffs. He and the person that oversees basically the association for all the bowls, Nick Carparelli, were on a dual monthly meeting. And so they get to come on, they talk some, and then they actually end up answering questions from the people in the audience. But to bring those kind of people in is pretty expensive. Well, now because it was virtual, they were willing to do it. So these guys got to hear and talk to some really big names, and it didn't really cost us a lot of money. So it's creating new ways to figure out how to do things without spending a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It will be really interesting to see how many people stay remote. Also, what conferences change, how interviews are done for internships and jobs. And because again, flying somebody out for an interview versus just doing a Zoom, some would debate, well, it's cheaper and it's, you still get to meet them face to face. I think there are a lot of different, there's differences, the body language, the getting to see the setting and the job and all those kind of things are very different. But yeah, I agree. There are benefits, and people have been really kind, I think, and generous with their time over this period of 2020 to help students be willing to talk, engage in conversations around, potential jobs or, what they do. So yeah, I think people have been very, very open and willing to engage as well, which is cool. And so when it comes to the financial piece, I know we talked a little bit about that, but could you kind of speak to what the impact could be? You know, I've read some articles too on maybe what happens next, you know, in the upcoming years because of COVID in 2020. So I don't know if you've, you know, the projection of numbers necessarily, but could you kind of speak to that, how you see that impacting, you know, the sports industry?
Well, I'd love to say, oh, it's going to be over after we get a vaccine, but there's going to be a long time recovery for all this. I mean, it's going to change the way people do business. I do believe, you know, one of the things we're looking at is from a bowl standpoint. I think that if we can survive and get through this, I really think, and we think, you know, we're feeling like that next year will be full capacity. There won't be limited capacities because the vaccine will be, by that time, it will be fully spread across the country. It's a full year from now. But I think the spring sports, the things that are going on, they're going to continue to have issues. I mean, it's funny because you look at some of these people. We had a September event we were going to do. Well, initially we said, all right, let's move it to November. Then we're like, oh, wait, let's move it to February. You know, all right, we're set on March. And we made sure we have a clause in there just in case we need to move it again. I think the biggest thing is organizations need to think out of the box and be flexible because of things still changing and moving. There may need to be the ability to shift timing of things. I mean, we saw when the Masters was playing. You know, I think right now it's more about being flexible. I think great safety protocols been in place. I think that will stay in place. Now, that said, there's a cost to that. I mean, I heard a quote, it was earlier in the week. Somebody told me that it cost $175,000 to basically take care of testing all the student athletes at a university a week. Now, I was kind of floored. I'm like, oh my gosh, will you think about that? You know, maybe at some point they're able to quit that, but I think they're going to put something else in place with that. I mean, so there's a long-term, there's a short-term, long-term issue, and that there's going to continue to be some cost associated with everything that's going on until it's finally out of the way. And I think it could be another year.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I agree. I think everyone in the spring sport should be prepared. I feel like everyone has that as their, like, we're hoping still, you know, I think everyone's projecting, not everyone, but I've heard, you know, the summer. When do you think things will get back to a little bit of a new normal? And it's like, well, the summer, if the vaccine goes, and, you know, but again, we all are kind of guessing. Nobody really knows. But I think that's interesting too, that you mentioned that this, you know, there will still be protocols that stay in place, maybe not as extreme, like student athletes getting tested who are in season 3 times a week, right? But maybe there is other times they have to test, you know, randomly or things like that, just to make sure. And will they require student athletes to get the vaccine? You know, there's a lot of questions that will come, and people who work maybe even in the sports industry who work alongside athletes. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting. A lot of new protocols and unprecedented times for sure. So can you tell us, you know, did your organization, and if so, how did your organization answer the call to confront racial inequality? We've kind of talked with that with everyone this fall. So curious how you guys did, if you did address that.
Well, I guess you would say that, I mean, we believe that in hiring, you know, there is racial equality. I mean, I don't think we've ever really looked at there being an issue from the standpoint of our organization. So in saying, how did we address it? I mean, did we talk about it? Sure. I mean, everybody's talking about it, but were we doing anything wrong? We did not. I mean, the way we looked at it, we were doing everything right in the way we evaluated people. And it kind of goes back to, you know, when I was talking about being humble, we look at everybody equal. Everybody has an equal opportunity. You know, it's funny. Well, remind me, let's touch on it in a minute about specifically internships. But no, we did. I mean, we didn't go out and make statements. And I will say, one of the things is, as a nonprofit, we tend to stay away from all the political ramifications. I mean, you can't support a candidate. You can't do these things. So we stay very neutral, but at the same time, we basically have policies in place that we are, an equal opportunity employer, that we are, when you look at it, we are pretty much, trying to help with the diversity of college athletes, making sure they have an opportunity for a postseason place to go. But we, from our standpoint of how we run things, we feel like that, we support the opportunity for everybody to have equal rights.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are with a nonprofit too, like you mentioned, there are definitely you stay away from certain conversation topics on a public level. Internally you have those places to discuss, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And advice. So if we get to specifically for our students, those who would like to be in a job similar to yours, what advice would you have for them on how to kind of get into the field you're in and how to stand out as an applicant?
So, I think one of the things you have to do is you have to take your education seriously. So when you come here, you want to have some skills. Believe it or not, there are still people that we find that don't have the basic Microsoft skills of Word documents or Excel. It just based on their path. Don't know why. It's just you come in here and go, okay, and that's part of their learning experience. But by having that be one of the pieces of their learning experience, they're probably behind on some of the other things they could learn. Again, I talked about volunteering. So let's just say this is their first internship. So volunteering is probably a good indication, and maybe some of the other jobs you've worked. And when I say other jobs, I know that there was an individual that we hired probably 3 years ago that was helping put herself through college, working at McDonald's. And so we had conversations about, well, tell us about your experience. Kind of like you said, well, what was your worst experience? Well, how did you handle that? So, having experience in sports marketing isn't necessarily mandatory, but some work experience may be beneficial, even if it's on the university basis. Hey, I was over intramurals and this was my job in college. That was things I did. Again, you want to check a box that says, here's what I accomplished. Not, oh, I just checked a box, but a box that can be, if someone asks about the box, here's what I did. So, I think I will definitely say that, I'm dressed pretty casually today. That's how we in COVID, no one's allowed access to our office. So, we just kind of dress like this on a daily basis. I will say, it's funny because typically, even before COVID, we were slacks and golf shirts. So that was kind of a nice environment. But jumping back to, if you're going to interview, dress appropriately. I truly believe that young men should be in a coat and tie, that young ladies can wear a suit or they can wear a dress, but dress appropriately. And again, I think it's more about having a respect for someone you're interviewing with. I mean, when you show up and, if you were to show up in what I typically wear to work every day, a golf shirt and slacks, I mean, I'm just going to look at them like, well, are they taking it seriously? And let's be clear. You know what? College is expensive. Sometimes you don't have that wherewithal. There are ways to do it. If you happen to be in a fraternity, you could borrow somebody's coat. If you're not, you might be able, it's been a long time since I've been in college, but you might be able to go talk to somebody or a friend of a friend and say, hey, I need to borrow a coat. I need to think through it. Just to say, hey, look, I can't afford this. If you have a desire, you can make things happen, and it doesn't necessarily have to cost you money. But I think you should dress appropriately. I think you should have when I say professionally prepared, I don't mean go hire a professional to do it. I mean professionally prepare your resume. Make it look nice. Make it talk about you. You know what I mean? Don't fill it up with a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter. Fill it up with the things that do matter. So those are kind of the things in my mind to prepare. I would say that, I know you guys, or at least, again, it's been a long time, but in theory, when you're in college, you have practice sessions. Go take some interview sessions. Don't take things for granted. Again, there are assets there for you to utilize on your own college campus. Don't take them for granted. utilize them. Figure out how to maximize that experience and get you prepared.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful because there are a lot of resources from what we have within the own sports management department to what the career resources offer. There are definitely opportunities to do, have conversations, look over resumes, cover letters, things like that. Can you speak to the cover letter? We haven't had a lot of people talk about that. What do you look for when you read cover letters? What do you kind of think should be on it? How, I know there's a lot of opinions, so I don't know necessarily think there's a right or wrong, but we'd just love to hear your take on it.
Well, no, so I will tell you the one thing not to do on a cover letter. Don't misspell words. Don't write run-on sentences. Write a professional letter. And you know what? And here's the thing. Yes, you could probably get somebody else to write it for you. You really need to write it for yourself. And I understand if somebody can proof it for you, but don't let them make a lot of changes. And here's why. Because you can actually get yourself in a little bit of a situation. You have this great looking cover letter and everybody's like, wow, this person can write. I've got a perfect job for them. And then you get in here and they're expecting you to do some writing and you're way over your head. They're like, yeah, no, go redo this. And they're constantly redoing things because now you're writing in your own style. So I think it's important for you to if you do a cover letter to, and I think it is appropriate because a cover letter can summarize and highlight maybe the one thing that you want to highlight, an experience that you think would be beneficial, or that exemplifies how humble you are. Not to pat yourself on the back, but do it in the right way. But to write that, and it's okay to have somebody grammatically check it for you, but don't have them totally write it for you.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because it's the genuineness too. I've heard that quite a bit as well, staying true to who you are.
Yes.
When you're applying, because that is who you are you at the end of the day, that's who they're hiring. So, and I think eventually after so many interviews, the truth comes out anyways. So you might as well start there. So, you can be on a good footing when you're like, okay, but you read my, this is who I am. This is what you're looking for. Or maybe it's not on either end. And you can kind of walk away going, okay, well, I at least showed up for who I am, not
That's right.
to be somebody else. For sure.
I agree 100% with that. Be yourself.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then, let's talk about internships. Tell us a little bit how you wanted to share about that. And then do you guys offer any internships and what you look for interns?
So we do. And so, like I said, so typical year, we would have 5. We would have a ticketing intern. We would have basically after ticketing, we would have a membership intern. And then there's various levels of marketing. Sometimes we assign them. Well, I mean, you start off in a specific assignment, but again, we mesh. And as we figure out what your true strong points are, that, the interview gets you so far, but then when you start going, okay, this one's better at this, you start basically pushing assignments to certain interns based on their skills. Again, that goes back to make sure you take advantage of your education and you get skills, because you don't want to get in a situation where all of a sudden you don't have a valuable skill. You sold yourself, you did a good job selling yourself, you got in the door, but you got no skills. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there and people are taking stuff away from you. That's happened here. We'll take it away from you. We'll give you, guess what? We got envelopes you need to seal. There you go. We all seal envelopes, but the point is that may be all you get if you're not talented enough. And I mean, we all have different talents, but if you can't find any talents because you've basically not honed any of your skills that you desired to hone, then you have nothing to offer. And so let me say this to you. The fact of the matter, I said we had 6 employees. So basically the person over our vice president of marketing was an assistantship. Now that's a little bit higher position than an internship. It's a 6-month deal. But she started there. We hired her. And then we have our new membership person, our charities person, our events person. Those 3 people were all interns. They were all interns that did a good job. You can't just show up and be an intern. You got to show up and do a good job. Because what happened was, in fact, the membership one, basically, she went away. And then when we had an opening, because she had done a great job, we reached out and said, hey, are you still looking for a job? What are you doing? She says, yeah, I am. She says, well, would you like to come back? And she came back. But traditionally, I mean, I was a volunteer, as I mentioned earlier. As you go through the process, when you look at people that we hire, typically the people we hire were interns in our own organization. So don't just show up to check a box off. If you get anything out of this whole discussion with me, don't just create check boxes and check them. Make something of it. Have fewer check boxes and make them powerful. If you get the opportunity, because there's not tons of opportunities, especially in the world we're in right now with COVID. If you get an opportunity to be an intern with someone, then you need to make the most of it. You need to be humble every day before you leave. If you've done what you've been assigned, whoever your direct report is, you should go to them, not on your way out the door, but before you pack your bags and say, hey, I finished up my assignments. Is there anything I can do for you? Or is there anybody else that needs help? Show your desire to work. Show your desire to help. And a lot of times we're going to say, God, we're good. Go ahead. You can go. But there's going to be those days where, hey, I don't, but maybe Katie needs something, and you get shifted over there, and all of a sudden you learn something new that day. I mean, don't make it a checkbox. Make it an experience that will benefit you as you further your career.
That's great. And I think, also being strategic in who you intern for, right? So use that time as in not just any role, but try and really go for those internships that are places you would desire to work eventually, and hope you can make a good impression. Because I think sometimes too, and I know with COVID, it gets a little trickier. I might not have as many opportunities, but again, it's just that idea that it's not, like you said, to check a box. There is purpose to it. So I think that's really helpful for them to hear and be reminded of as well. So those are all the questions that I have. Gabby, do you have any questions?
No, I think I'm good. Robert, you always answer questions very clearly and well response. So I enjoyed listening to what you had to say. It was kind of cool to go back into the Gator Bowl mode and talk with you. And I'm just really glad we got to talk. And thank you again for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure. And Gabby, you may cut this out of this deal. Gabby may have already told you, I said she was my favorite intern. She was the number one intern in her whole class. Actually, she's like the number one intern we've ever had here.
Wow, Gabby, that's awesome.
It was. I mean, seriously. And it was funny because I said, I'm trying to remember. Oh, I know what it was. We have an annual Christmas party. We were on the way to the Christmas party. And I was describing all of the interns, because as we got there, my wife wanted to know, okay, who's going to be, who are they? And I said, I'll introduce you to Gabby. She's my favorite. She's my number one. The rest of them, you don't have to remember their name. I mean, Gabby made an impression, and that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, and I say that we had Casey. Casey did a great job. Casey, we call him Casey 75. He's actually down there in an assistantship at Florida right now as well with the stadium with the football ops.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So actually, in talking about it, we have a lot of Florida students that tend to come through here. Mm-hmm. Gabby, it was a pleasure. It was my honor. It was very nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you as well. Thank you again so much for your time, and all the information is really helpful. I think the students will have a lot to take away from it and just be reminded of multiple things that they hear. But I think hearing from a professional who's done it for many years, is always another almost louder voice at times. Like they probably at this point get sick of hearing us remind them, but to go like, hey, here's somebody who could hire you. Here's an internship potential opportunity. What are they looking for? So yeah, thanks again for all your insights, for sure.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Y'all take care and be safe.
Thanks.
You too, Robert. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.